I'm mainly making this video because I do want to try and get my thoughts out on a few characters, especially one that I think is one of the final villains of the story, or is a villain in this story. And this will come as a bit of a surprise to most people, but I do want to start off with the problem with Shen Wulong. Now, Shen Wulong is currently in the manga, as of the making of this video, the strongest character in Kengan Omega, point blank period. He's so much more powerful that even doing damage to him is basically, you get credit for even doing that. Hell, I gave Tarashi credit for even perceiving Shen in the first place. And so a lot of people are like, man, this man is too powerful. How are we supposed to beat this guy? But most people actually recognize a problem, and it's a problem that at first it seems like people are joking about it, but I do think it's rather serious in a sense. And that is the fact that it's not necessarily Shen's power. That's a different topic entirely that has been covered before. It's more so his character. As a villain, as an antagonist, I think it's important to understand, like, the Worm have been bad guys for most of this manga, alright? Like, they have done terrorist attacks. The Westwood faction is behind the death of Uriel, one of the biggest characters in the series. They've fought against the Kengan Association for a while. These guys are supposed to be the bad guys, typically. However, when you look at their head, Shen Wulong, you can see he's powerful, but you don't hate him because of his personality. He seems to be a very nice, chill dude. Like, I don't know anyone who hates Shen. I haven't seen a single comment of like, oh my god, Shen is so evil. Nothing. I bet there are people who hate Mukaku more than they hate Shen Wulong, even though Shen Wulong, you could say, is still involved in the practices that gave birth to the person that Mukaku ultimately was. Even still, I would bet people hate Mukaku more. And this got me thinking about Shen Wulong's portrayal in the story so far. Despite being the pinnacle of strength, the author, Sandrovich, hasn't really gone out of his way to portray Shen Wulong as evil yet. Now, I do have a theory on how Shen Wulong could be evil, but again, it's just a theory. I'm going to release it later on. The problem still stands as it is, because even my theory is a bit iffy when it comes to, is Shen Wulong even evil if my theory is true? I think it is possible for Sandrovich to flip the script with Shen Wulong. I think that's 100% possible. But I think what's happening with Shen Wulong is completely deliberate. We know Sandrovich can make characters that are basically evil or dislikable. This is basically the person who created the last Nico, who is basically behind characters like, let's say, Edward Wu, who was clearly not a good person. Zai Ji, people, knew this guy was a piece of shit. And there are so many other examples of just characters that are evil, but also some that were written in such a way where you don't like them. Mukaku, again, another person that comes to mind. Characters that I wouldn't blame anyone for disliking these characters. Not that they are badly written, but rather that they just dislike what they stand for, essentially. But we see next to none of this with Shen Wulong, and that's a problem. That's a problem because that means that Sandrovich is deliberately doing this. That's what I would put my bets on, honestly. That Sandrovich is going out of his way to make Shen Wulong likable. And so, the question does actually pop up. Is Shen Wulong even the final villain? If there will be a final villain, actually there should be a villain actually in this story, in my opinion, considering everything that has happened. And so, this leads me to think that Luohan might be the final villain. Now, we don't have much to go off of when it comes to Luohan, but everything about him so far is a red flag. And I really don't trust Luohan because of how many red flags there are. Let's start with one that I think is a bit more obvious. Let's start with an obvious one. Shen Wulong doesn't like Luohan. You can see that in the way he basically knocks the shit out of him and he just goes flying. Clearly there's hostility towards him in a way that it isn't with, like, let's say someone who, like Oma, who we are assuming is Luohan's clone. We haven't really seen this side of Shen Wulong with anyone else in the story so far. And so that's like hint number one. Unless there's something wrong with Shen Wulong, like something seriously wrong with Shen Wulong, then there is something we're just not understanding with Luohan. The next thing, and I think this is a lot more subtler, and that is, and it might be a bit petty, that is Luohan's character design. And I'll tie this in with my final point when it comes to why I think Luohan is more than likely the final villain. And that is that his suit, it has this sort of design on it, which is, it looks pretty cool, right? It's a very, very nice suit. But to me, the first time I saw this, like the first time I was like, that looks like snake skin. That literally looks like he's wearing like some reptile snake skin type of suit, even though it looks good. And this is where I don't think that's a good sign at all, honestly, because I'm going to tie this in with how they're introduced. Shen Wulong, how Shen Wulong is introduced into the story, and how Luohan is introduced. The first time we see Shen Wulong, we don't really see his face. We see him, Yan is saying, hey, someone has come to meet you, and we see Shen Wulong stand up, and we see he's basically wearing his fighting gear. You can see his muscles. You can see him as the symbol of strength. He's in a high place, high up in the mountains. It's brimming with strength, with power, with majesty, and with just authority as well. Clearly, this scene was planned out to say, hey, look, this is Shen Wulong. No matter what happens, all his other type of personalities that are kind of quirky, this is true about him no matter what. But notice Luohan's introduction. Luohan's introduction, the first time we see him, he is literally sneaking into the Kengan Association like a snake. The first sort of panel we see of him, we don't even see half of his face, like it's shaded in black. But when we properly see him, it's when he's revealing himself. But I think these introductions contrast each other a lot. We have one who's slithering in and one who stands proud with his strength. And that to me is a huge red flag for Luohan's character. There's the other part where Luohan, again, this is another one, I guess, and that is that Luohan tries to be likable. He tries really hard. Like, he makes jokes, he tries to be relaxing, and no one buys it. At least so far, that's how I've seen. No one has been able to be like, oh yeah, he's a cool dude. No. Everyone has sort of been like, nah, they're not easy around him, you could say. Or at least they don't buy when he tries to do that. And to me, I think, again, these are just red flags. I see things here that it could be that Luohan is the victim to some extent. But there's just, like, even if, let's say, Shen Wulong isn't justified in when he punched Luohan, maybe he isn't justified in that. But the fact that we don't know, there's a gap in our knowledge when it comes to Luohan, that to me concerns me. Because he could have completely justifiable reasons for not liking Luohan. And that's where the problem ultimately is. And I think here we have a pretty good foundation, in my opinion, for Luohan being a villain on the worm side. And I just wanted to make a video on my thoughts on Luohan so far, why I don't trust him, and I think there's just too many red flags in his character and even in Shen Wulong's character so far, how he's been portrayed as the final boss. But that's it. That's the video. If you liked the discussion, don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.